Hello everyone, I'm Keith Platfoot with Kviation, and today I'm going to show you how to log your first flight in Smart Logbook. So let's imagine we've just finished a commercial flight from KCMH John Glenn Airport in Columbus, Ohio, and we've just landed here in KATL Hartsfield-Jackson International in Atlanta. So let's go ahead and log that flight in Smart Logbook. So we're starting out here on the opening screen of the app. This is the flight list screen. Now, of course, we don't have any flights logged yet. So let's tap the plus button at the top and begin logging our first flight. And this opens up the flight editor. You'll see here there's a number of fields for logging different aspects of our flight. The top one here is the date field. Now, this is the only field populated by default. And you can see it's set to today's date. Now, if we were logging a prior flight, we could just tap that field and we could choose any other date we like. But for now, we'll go ahead and keep that as the current date and move down to the flight number field. So the flight number field, when you tap that, it's going to open up a number pad. So we can type our flight number, which in this case is going to be 5806. You'll notice that there's a small keyboard icon in this field. Now, if we tap that, we can actually change our keyboard from the number pad to a full alphanumeric keypad. This would be useful if, for example, you wanted to add the airline prefix in front of the flight number. But for now, let's just stick with the number pad and move on. The next field down is aircraft. So let's tap that to set the aircraft for our flight. And this takes us to the aircraft list screen. Now again, we don't have any aircraft yet added, so let's tap plus and add our first one. Now the first thing we need to add for the aircraft is the registration or tail number. So let's go ahead and enter 410 Whiskey November. All right, now we also want to set the aircraft model. So we're going to tap that field, and this takes us to the list of aircraft models. And again, we need to tap plus to add the first model. So the model that we're going to use is the Boeing 737-300. So we enter that identifier in the first field there. Now there's a bunch of other fields here as well for setting different attributes of the aircraft model. For now, we're just going to set the category class to multi-engine land. And we're going to tap done to return to the aircraft, which now has the model. We'll tap done one more time, and we return to our flight, which now has our aircraft and its model populated. Moving down now to the route fields, let's tap the from field to set our departure airport. Now the first time that we go to the airport selection screen here, the app is going to ask us if it's okay to use our location. And the reason that it uses our location is to determine which airport we're currently at. So Smart Logbook ships with a database of over 40,000 airports. And if we allow it to use the GPS, very often we won't need to enter the airport code at all. It can be automatically detected. So let's allow using location while using the app. And you can see that as soon as we enable that, we now have KATL showing up in our airport list. Now this is the airport that we just landed at. So to enter a departure airport, we're still going to type that in. So let's go to the search field here at the top and enter in the code for John Glenn Airport, which is KCMH. There it is. We tap the row and we populated our departure airport. We can now move on to setting the arrival airport. And again, we go to the airport list screen. We now see KATL is still showing up there as the current airport. The current airport is always going to show at the top of this list and with this little GPS indicator on the right-hand side. So let's just tap that row and we now have our route field set. We can move down now to the time fields. We have all of the standard times here, the out, off, on, in times. Let's go ahead and enter the departure and arrival times. So we're going to tap the departed field here. And this was a flight that left at 8:30 a.m. Now, in Smart Logbook, by default for commercial pilots, you're going to log times as the Zulu, in the Zulu time zone, UTC. So let's enter this instead as actually 1230 Zulu. Now there are options if you'd prefer local time, but it's obviously standard to use Zulu times for these. And let's also set the arrival time. So we tap that field, and in this case we landed at 10:05 a.m., which translates to 1405 Zulu. So we just enter the time in the pop-up, and we have our time set. Now you'll notice that when we set those times, that in the next section here, durations, we actually have now automatically populated our total flight time, which is 1 hour and 35 minutes. You see there by the total. You'll also notice that we've automatically populated another duration field, which is the pilot and command time. Now this field shows up by default when you begin using Smart Logbook, but the app supports a whole number of different duration type fields here. And if we tap Add Duration right here, you can see the list of the built-in types that the app supports. So there's of course pilot and command. If we're the co-pilot, first officer, we may want to be logging second in command time. If you're a student pilot, you're probably logging maybe some dual received or solo time. And there's a number of options here. And if we go all the way to the bottom, you can also see there's an option here for adding a custom duration field if we like. Now for this flight, we're just going to log one additional field, which is the instrument time. So let's check the box, click OK to return to the flight. And you can now see that we have an instrument field added to our duration section here. Now in this case, let's assume that we had a little bit of weather coming into Atlanta. So we want to log 30 minutes of instrument time. So we tap the field, we simply enter our 30 minutes here, and we hit set. And now we have that time logged as well. Now you'll notice when I'm logging the times here that I'm using hours and minutes. This is the default for commercial pilots, but there's also an option to log hours and tenths, which is much more typical if you're a GA pilot. I should also mention that the app will actually remember the duration types that we add here. So the next time I log a flight, it's going to add the same duration types that I used on this flight. So if I'm a student pilot and I'm always logging dual received, the next time I open this flight editor, I don't have to keep adding that field. It's going to add it for me automatically. Let's move down now to takeoff and landings. And in this case, we want to log 1 day takeoff and 1 day landing. That's easy enough. Let's move down now to approaches. So by default, we don't have any approaches. Let's add an instrument approach, add Atlanta. So we tap the Add Approach button here. And you can see again, the app comes with a number of built-in approach types. We're just going to log this as a generic ILS approach. And you can see we also have a field here for adding additional information about the approach, such as the runway. Let's go ahead and enter 27 right for our runway here. Okay, so we've now logged an instrument approach. Moving down, we get to the crew member section. So let's tap the Add Crew Member button here to add a crew member. Now first we're going to enter the crew member's position, which in this case is going to be our co-pilot. And once we do that, we just tap the crew member field to specify who that was. Now again, we don't have any crew members added to our logbook yet, so let's tap plus and add our fictional first officer, whose name is John Smith. You'll see here on the crew member editor that we can also add some notes, and we can even add a photo of our crew member if we'd like. But for now, we're just going to tap done, and this takes us back to the flight where we now have John Smith added as our co-pilot. And this takes us almost to the bottom of the editor where we have the remarks field. And of course we can log anything in this field we'd like. This is, in this case, we're just going to say that we had a great landing here at ATL. And that should do it. Okay, so we've now logged all of the basic information we need for our flight. So all that's left is to tap Done to save this to our logbook. Great. So now we can see our first flight here, our KCMH to KATL, and that's it. So I hope this has been a good introduction for logging a flight in Smart Logbook. In our next video, we're going to take a look at some additional features and options when logging flights. And if you have any questions or feedback, feel free to reach out to us at feedback@thesmartlogbook.com. Thanks.